So Katie is the founder and creative director of Backlash. Backlash has been going strong since 2017 and was created to provide brands with a new, more progressive, creative, experiential agency model. Big agency thinking without the price tag. The company calls Space & K, Pandora, Marc Jacobs, L'Oreal, and a whole bunch of other companies as its client. So welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you so much.
We actually met when we did a piece of work together.
Yes.
Back in the summer. And I think it was one of the hottest days of the year.
Yep.
And we were doing some filming and you happened to be creating the experience for the client. And we just kept in touch and here we are in the exciting Backlash offices. Firstly, for the benefit of the audience, who are you and what do you do?
Yes, so as Sud said, my name's Katie. I'm the creative director and co-founder of Backlash. So as the creative director, I'm responsible for coming up with all of the concepts for all of our experiential campaigns, and I also head up and lead the team, the creative team at Backlash. But who are Backlash? We're an experiential agency, and often we get asked what is experiential, which is kind of it's a really interesting form of marketing, and it takes many different forms. But I would say if you're going to kind of put it into some kind of headline, it's advertising in real life. So it can be anything from pop-up shops, which is where we met each other, all the way down to in-store events for existing retailers. But the whole premise of it being experiences that customers can get involved with in real life.
Because I actually, in preparation for this podcast, I listened to the previous podcast that you had posted recently. And I think the first thing you say is, it's the question that we get asked most often. But I guess it's like for the marketeers amongst, who are listening and watching, they'll know what experiential marketing is. But, I guess from, finance and business, why should brands care? Why should they go out and bother to meet their customers? What's in it for them?
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges that we often faced, and I would say probably a number of years ago, rather than where we are today, is that it was actually quite a new form of marketing. So I would say maybe around 2010, it became kind of a bit of a buzzword that was kind of being bandied around agencies. And over that period, kind of just what we've seen is that experiential now is becoming more kind of recognised as a marketing activation in its own right. But I think the reason why brands definitely should be kind of getting invested in experiential is because it's one of, if not the only way that you can have experiences with your customers, like one-to-one. So for example, if you take other different kind of marketing streams, so it be social media or TV or print, it's passive. So you're not directly talking to customers, you're directly talking to a group of customers, which hopefully you marketers know a lot about. But when it comes to pop-ups, you've actually got people in your pop-up shop, in your experience, in your store, and that's where you can have these conversations. This is where you can get people emotionally engaged in your brand, understanding so much more about your brand than just seeing something on social media. So I would say it's about emotional side of marketing and having those emotive moments with customers, which means that when the customer leaves the pop-up shop, for example, they're remembering your brand for their experience that they've had. Completely. And that is, something that not a lot of marketing streams can actually kind of put results behind.
So I guess it's like one of the few marketing activities that are available at the arsenal of marketers where you actually get to, where the customers actually get to touch and feel the actual products or service, if they can actually come and meet you in person. And it's very, very memorable because, you're not going to forget something that's quite distinctive. For example, the pop-ups that you worked on. And the next thing is, I was looking through your LinkedIn and you have a very creative background. You've worked with a few creative agencies and you've been a creative director for a while. How do you come up with the ideas?
Again, this is one of those questions where I'm like, oh God, what is the answer to that? I would say to come up with good ideas, this feels really meh, but you have to have a good brief. And a lot of our clients will give us briefs that are super wide and they haven't kind of quite ticked the box of, okay, what is the one thing that makes their brand sing or their product sing? So when you come up with ideas and the briefs like that, you then have to start looking for the little like nuggets in their brand, in their product that you think is totally unique to them, and start like basically prizing out these little like strands and thoughts of like magic that you can see in their brand or product that they might not necessarily know about. Once you kind of have that little nugget, it's then kind of building on that with lots of different inspiration that you may see in the world, in the city, through friends that you know, people you spend time with, exhibitions you've been to, what other brands are doing. It's purely inspiration, and then being able to take all those different thought pockets of inspiration and marry them up. That's the magic, and make it make sense, because it's really easy to be creative and it just be completely like random and nonsensical and absolutely have nothing to do with the brand that you're talking about. So it's being able to be your own critic and strip out things that you don't think are going to work.
So if I were to ask you, like, how many ideas do you actually start off with in the long list, and how many actually do you like have a process of whittling down like a long list of ideas and getting it down to either 2 or 3 that you would...
Yeah, exactly. So I would say typically when I get a brief, I probably come up with about 20 concepts for pop-ups. And then it's down to myself to get them down to about 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
So that's typically kind of where I start. And it is just anything goes, write it down, any thought. And then it is you've got to then strip it back. How can I make it relevant? What are the things in the client's brief that they definitely want to achieve that I can bring back to those ideas? So you then can start like whittling it down. But I also have like a personal bucket list of ideas and thoughts that I've had over the years that I want to incorporate into pop-ups as well. So selfishly have my own have my own little list of things that I would love to incorporate into pop-ups as well. Successfully getting through a number of them, but over the years. But yeah.
But do you I went to this thing called the Lego workshop a few years ago. Lego for adults, I think. It sounds really weird, but how you've come to the client with your wonderful ideas, which took you a long time to create and come up with. But sometimes when you're dealing with a boardroom like this, people can be very cold and say, "I hate that. This sucks." How do you get over that?
Experience. It takes a long time, and obviously like I manage a team of creative people who are at lots of different stages of their career, and it's something that I'm very aware of, and I would say clients are very brutal, and I guess there's a couple of things that I could say about this. When clients see the work that we create, I think that there is an understanding in the room that the ideas have come out of someone's brain and they don't exist in the real world. So when a creative or an agency is presenting that work, it's likely come out of 1 or 2 people's imagination. So when clients are saying things like, it's boring, or that's not going to work, or you totally missed this, it's like a little hit for your kind of inner child a little bit, where you're like, oh God, like that's my imagination. And it's a world that I've created. And to that person, it's, incredible and it's magical. And that person can see the full potential of what they've put in front of a client. So to ask a team to kind of be like, it's fine. Like, it's like, it takes time, I would say, to definitely kind of not feel insulted.
And it's like you gotta, when this happens to us all the time when we come to pitch ideas, and you gotta have a level of thick skin to be able to kind of survive that kind of brutality sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. It does feel brutal sometimes, but after years and years of kind of going through that day in, day out, you do understand the other side
become
of
numb
it
to
as
it.
well.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No.
You do. There are some times where it's like, okay. And you do have to speak to the client and be like, okay, we need to go back to the brief and we have answered these things, and you have to protect yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it is. My old creative director, my first job it's like, this is a horrible thing to say, but it's like, kill your babies.
Yeah.
So they're like your little, like these little parcels of joy that you're putting out into the world, and you have to just let it go.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, and it's hard.
It is. I think, when me and my colleague, hopefully none of my clients are listening, what we used to do is we would have our superstar idea, and we'd have two others, good ideas, but there's one idea we'd really hope they take on. So we would do this thing where we'd have two ideas back to back, and then the third one would be the best one. We'd save it. But a lot of the times it would be like, okay, we like some elements of this, we like some elements of that. We hate the part of this, and we'd have to kind of mix and match the three ideas. That must happen all the time with you.
It happens all the time.
Can you tell us a bit more about the bucket list that you have? Like, what kind of, is it an actual bucket, or what kind of things does it actually?
There's a few things, because like, just to go back to your point about the third idea, we do that as well. So we call that it's the wild card.
The wild card, that's it.
The wild card idea, which is, I like to kind of view it as, if I had that money, how would I spend it? And that would be what I would do with that money if I was the client. They're the wild card ideas. I also put them in because it demonstrates to clients as well that actually we can think beyond the brief and give advice and just show off our creative flair. So maybe next time, when they want to hopefully work with us again, they feel a little bit freer to let the brief be a little bit more open to interpretation.
Because, I guess once you've won the trust and once you've proven that you can deliver, things become a lot easier for
exactly. Everyone. And that's the thing, it's about creating relationships. At the end of the day, the clients that we work with, we're asking them to put a lot of trust into us and a lot of money as well. So, it's down to chemistry, I would say. Sometimes we end relationships with clients because there isn't that chemistry there. And that's just as important to us as an agency as it is to the clients we work with, because we end up spending a lot of time together. A pop-up takes about 4 months from start to finish. So we're talking to teams day in, day out, multiple times a week. So if we haven't got that chemistry with each other, it becomes quite obvious quite quickly. And then you're like, oh, okay, maybe next time we don't work together. And that's fine. And, we can have those conversations.
Because, pop-up, especially when it involves elements of, the British weather, for example, which we found out for, a company we may or may not mention, as well as when it involves members of the general public, there's always this kind of unpredictability factor, and it can be very, very stressful, I guess, when it comes to, because I don't envy your pop-ups, because, I know that months and months of work has gone in, but sometimes on the day itself, something could go wrong. How do you plan for them?
So, I would say in about 4 weeks to 6 weeks ahead of each pop-up, we build out hundreds of different contingency plans. So, for example, if it throws it down with rain, what's our backup plan for those situations? If it unexpectedly is really hot and we're outside, what do we do? So we plan for things as best as we can, but also it's like any project. There are things that happen when we're building, when things go live, that you absolutely could not have predicted or have no control over. So in those situations, it's about having a contingency pot which we build into budgets just in case, because we're like, if something goes wrong, how much is that going to cost is normally the first thing. You know, we've had like some of the pop-ups on the hottest day of the year. You know, we couldn't plan for that to be the hottest day of the year, and it's there for 11 days. So, but customers and staff are overheating. So what do we do? Okay, we've got to buy air conditioning units, but it's fine business-wise because we've got a contingency plan in that, and that pot will take up the emergency air conditioning units.
You know, some ice lollies. Perhaps, you know, you can actually finally be paid to eat cornetto.
Exactly.
You know, you talked about we just spoke about the contingencies, but what are some of that? You know, like, could you tell us a bit more about some of your highlights over the years you've run over the years you've run pop-ups, as well as come up with that? You know, like from plan to actual executions. What's been some of the most memorable things you've done?
So for a long time, Backlash was just the three of us. So it isn't until after the pandemic that we actually began to grow the agency. So for a long time, it was me, Aaron, and James. So we were growing the business from zero, and then trying to like gain trust with clients to kind of believe in us. Because prior to Backlash, we had all worked in Experiential in really big agencies. So for us, it was very early on landing the first kind of big project, because as soon as we did that, we were like, okay, we're away, because we can demonstrate now to clients that we're not just kind of saying we can do big things, we can actually show. So I would say that one of the first big projects we did was for a jewellery brand called Olivia Burton, and that was in Covent Garden. So the exact same spot that we did the Thatcher pop-up for Space NK. And that's ironic because our first pop-up was a greenhouse for Olivia Burton, and then Thatcher was a Japanese greenhouse in the same spot. So that was like an amazing kind of like 360 experience. I was like, okay, we started off here and now we're equally doing another big project here. So that was a high for us, was doing this pink greenhouse in the middle of Covent Garden. And then I would say the highs that have come off the back of that is then these projects are just kind of getting bigger and better. And I would say we just did that really amazing pop-up for Pandora. And that was completely different to anything we'd done before at Backlash. And then also moving into fashion, that's been a massive high for us. Working with Marc Jacobs was an incredible experience, completely different to beauty, which is, you know, one of the areas that we work a lot in is beauty. And then moving into fashion was a completely different world for us, and we loved it.
From, you know, like in the world of, you know, but I know that you've also worked for other brands and industry sectors as well. Do you find that you've developed a specialism within one type of industry, or can the experiential as well as the pop-up experience be easily translated into other areas of categories, for example?
No, and that's one of the strong points of Experiential, is that it doesn't just live and die by the physical experience. So my background was kind of more traditional advertising. So that was everything from shooting food for Greggs was one of my first kind of clients. Absolute dream client. Nothing bad to say about Greggs at all. Absolutely loved working for the agency who worked for them. So it was everything from food photography to TV shoots to newspaper to selling sofas for DFS. So I've got a whole kind of background, and that was working in all the kind of different types of advertising. So when I started to work in Experiential, one of the things that I saw the potential is that we can create a pop-up, but it can work amazing for social media. I can do loads of pre-awareness. We can do media takeovers that promote it. We can do post awareness. We can shoot all this content, and then the brands can use that for weeks after if they want. They can use the pop-up as a photo shoot area if they want to. So for me, Experiential kind of fits really nicely into all the different touch points for advertising, because it's not just an event that kind of goes, oh, right, that was an event, and then it's off again. We've got loads of different channels that it can work in as well.
I think the one when we worked on Space NK, I think they had invited all of their social media influencers to come along. And it's like, you're not only getting actual general members of the public actually coming in, transacting and buying the items itself. You actually had some pretty big influencers who were passing through. So, like from my side, it was just like you had considered lots of different things in place. And, I guess, if you were to look at this media spend and the ROI, there's so many things that, that kind of has elements that you've kind of touched upon.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's, the services that we offer at Backlash is all of that. So we can do the media takeovers, we can do the influencer dinners beforehand, we can do we can open the pop-up a day before for PR, press, influencer, we can do the post awareness, we can shoot it, we can work with you guys to capture content. So that's how we work. So even though the pop-up is the physical piece, we're working across all the other channels around it to make it as strong as possible so that people know where it is, they come down, they're not just kind of seeing it on someone's social media, they know when it's happening, they can get tickets, they know what the freebies are, they know what the experience is, it looks compelling, it looks a strong creative idea that people want to go visit.
I was really impressed, not just because of the actual location itself, but the number of people who passed through, and it was just like a very visceral experience, even just for me as a person who wouldn't necessarily be buying makeup for my own for myself, but it was just really, really impressive. So I was like, I think I had no idea that you were responsible for it, but then I started talking to you about it, and then you told me more. You've worked with some really big brands. Mm-hmm. What have been some of the challenges that you faced? Without going into these, I guess the motivation for that question was, what can others learn from this, from experiences challenges that you faced?
Yeah. God, there's a lot of learnings.
We've got a lot of time.
I'm just trying to think, what is the most important one? I would say, as frustrating as it can be to be a creative, I also try to imagine what it is like to be a client.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're working with big brands, I'm working with clients who are in massive teams, and they're one representative of that brand and of that team, and at the end of the day they want to do good work and they want to not get into trouble their side. So I would say it is when you're working with these brands, it's really easy to kind of get frustrated and be like, they're not listening to feedback, then and they're not doing this. That can be the headspace to be in. But I would say it's about becoming their buddy and helping them and guiding them through what are the steps that they can do to kind of really push the creative, for instance, or get their boss to kind of sign it off. Or, we'll put in sessions where if we don't feel we're getting anywhere with the creative, for instance, because obviously I work on the creative, so I can speak more freely about that. But if I feel like we're not really getting anything signed off with the creative and we're kind of feeling like we're treading water and we're not getting anywhere, we'll put in sessions where we'll get the clients down into the office and we'll sit together and we'll go through all the creative and be like, hey, what do you think? What do you not think's working? We'll get it up on the wall, and it feels more of a working session that clients feel they're part of, rather than an agency being like, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And it stops that kind of worry that they
so I guess it's very like collaborative, your approach.
Really collaborative. We feel like that's what we've found success in, is collaboration. The clients that we work with, they've got a real passion for beauty or fashion. They've come into this because they're also somewhat creative minded as well, and are excited about the prospect of marketing as well. So having that collaboration with the client and them feeling like they're listened to, and us feeling that we can actually push creative or have open conversations, it's actually a really good way of working with big brands. Also, on the flip side, I always say to clients, if you don't want to be involved in any of this, we can do all of it. And you can just turn up for the cocktails at the end. So also, that's an option for clients too.
I mean, next time that happens, I hope you will not forget your old friend Suds here. Because usually those are the funnest part, because you've done all the work, you've done every 4 or 5 months worth of work, and you can actually finally celebrate with a glass of a cocktail or a glass of wine or two. Probably more. There is a pub around the corner from here, so I'm guessing that wasn't an accident why you chose this office. I mean, we work in a WeWork and we have beer on tap. So sometimes we strategically invite our clients to come along, and afterwards we can just say, hey, let's have a glass of wine or beer or whatever. And, in those things, they actually start opening up and actually tell us, the insider information, things that we need to know about. So that's always good.
It feels less of a business transaction and more of we can actually work together on a project and we can be a team, which is definitely the better way to work on these projects.
Yeah. Anyone who wants to do business with big British brands, then you've got to take your clients out to the pub and, have a few drinks. Or maybe have a few orange juices if you don't drink, but whatever. But most likely, beers will always help. Top tips here from Zero Calorie Marketing. Next up, what advice would you give to anyone who's looking to run experiential marketing campaigns? For example, if there's a very, very small brand and they want to do a pop-up, I don't know if it's a one-person band, a one-man band, or a one-person band, or a very small company. What advice would you give to guys who are in this position?
I think there's a couple of things that can be done as a one-man band or a small brand or business. The first one is thinking about what the unique offering of your product or brand is and pushing that hard. So that also can open the door to what the creative idea is. I like to use the NYX Barbie project that we did, which was also in Covent Garden. But the unique offering for NYX Barbie products was it'd been influenced by the Barbie movie. They had a whole range of products that was inspired by the film. So that was their unique offering. So the creative then was, we have to create a Barbie world for the pop-up, right? It has to look like it's come out of the Barbie movie. So that kind of unique thinking is about then just capitalizing on that and then making that into your experience. You don't need to have hundreds of thousands of pounds to do these pop-ups. The locations are the most expensive part of this, definitely. So that would be my second thing. You have a great creative idea, but then your locations and where you are is just as important, because if you have a great idea and then no one can get to it, that's bad use of money.
I mean, the locations, I think you've been in Covent Garden, you've been in Tower Bridge, and, these are very iconic. I guess that kind of rubs off on the brand itself in terms of, we're here, we're kind of here in and you cannot not miss these kind of, pop-ups that you've created. But what about if you were, let's say, I don't know, this is actually, I was at a conference a few months ago, and this lady had created her own very, very delicious gluten-free cakes, and she was going into trade shows as well as these kind of Saturday markets where people could go in and buy small volumes. Is there anything someone like that could do to actually just, whether that be having a very creative, I don't know, stand, or what could someone like this person do to actually make sure that it's eye-catching enough, or even things like maybe sending an email out or doing some social, what advice would you?
I would say being super proactive is one of the things. It's also how we market ourselves. So we're really proactive. So we don't kind of blanket approach anything. We're really kind of laser focused on who we want to speak to. So for example, if there is a brand that we want to talk to, we will put a whole proposal together to talk to that one brand.
Oh, wow.
And then feedback that we get from clients is, do you know how many agencies reach out to me a day? And I'm not only going to talk to you guys because you've actually bothered to put something together that's unique for me.
Ooh.
And so that's kind of what we do, it takes a lot of time, it
Yeah.
takes a lot of effort, but being laser focused on where you want to be and who you want to talk to and being proactive about it, it's the same as if you were going to apply for your dream job, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same approach. And then I guess also collaboration is a really good way for small brands to kind of be seen. So for example, when we do these pop-ups, there'll often be, we're talking food and drink at this moment in time, but like there'll often be drinks brands and food brands that we'll work with to give kind of drinks and food to content creators or influencers. That's a great opportunity for an under the radar brand to kind of get involved. You know, maybe they want to give us 30 cans of drink for free. And then they can be at the pop-up, they have a presence, they've got content they can use on social media. You know, that's a way of doing it. There's also lots of different kind of pop-ups that do appear, especially in London. We've worked with an ice cream brand called ROI. They featured a lot in our pop-ups, and the owner got in touch with us because she was like, I've got an opportunity at Wimbledon to do a pop-up and get my ice cream out there. Can you guys work with me to kind of create this pop-up shop? And we were like, okay, what's your budget? And her budget was about £4,000. And we were like, okay, we can't do anything with that budget. We'll be very honest with you. But great to meet you. Here's some like kind of things that you can maybe do in the future. Get in touch with us. And then this was all around Wimbledon time. And then we were like, oh, okay, great. We need to do a pop-up in Covent Garden and the client wants to give away ice cream. And we were like, do you know what? We've just spoken to this ice cream brand and she's told us that she can create bespoke ice creams, whatever flavour. So then we've started working with this producer and this supplier, and now they've got a pop-up in Spitalfields.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's like, and she's been able to use all these content pieces around that. So again, it's about kind of being that like laser focused, and she was seeing opportunities, we saw opportunities. We were very collaborative together. She seemed like a great person. We loved her products.
And it's almost like one of these opportunities where for you to be be able to be associated with a major brand, it kind of, people associate you with that. And, I guess for a company like that, it's the kind of thing which is like, you kind of manufacture these things. You just have to be in the right place at the right time and kind of collaborate. One thing you said that I wanted to go back on, you mentioned approaching brands and finding unique ways. Could you give us some examples of how you've done that to win business for your company? Without giving away all your secrets, obviously.
No, it's fine. Because for a really long time we worked with a company called Neom Organics, and they're a wellbeing brand. They specialise in candles and home scents, but they've got a whole the heart of that brand is about self-care and well-being. It's not just about have a candle and that will solve all your issues. So the founder is very much in that world, and she's super present and very proactive about that kind of narrative. So we had an amazing idea for them, and we got in touch with them. This was years ago. We put a whole presentation together about a pop-up they could do, and that's when the client was like, yeah, we have loads of agents get in touch with us today. You're the only person that I've actually bothered to kind of speak to because of how proactive you are, and the idea you actually sent us was really good. So that's an example. They didn't do the pop-up, but we then worked with them for years, doing all of their windows for their Christmas schemes, VM in store. We'd helped them with a number of kind of small pop-ups. We did like surprise and delight moments for them during the festive period. And that's what we've done time and time again with clients.
I mean, I guess, as a small business, as a small agency, essentially, I guess your biggest weapon or your biggest advantage is you are able to be creative in your approach. And, I've seen some of the brands that you work with. The proof is in the pudding, I guess. Yeah. Would you have any advice to someone who's listening that wants to kind of, I don't know, do something different in order to reach their target kind of customer, for example, or any words of advice for that from a creative perspective?
Yeah. The sentence that came into my head was "Let your freak flag fly."
Let your freak flag fly. On that note, thank you for listening.
I think for a number of years when I was working at agencies years ago, the being creative and being like truly creative and progressive was not the aim of the game. And what we do at Backlash is we push the creative narrative. So it is about how far can we take creative ideas. So for me, that is, and I will always be on the creative side of, you can push it as far as you want, as long as you've got ideas that are somewhere realistic. Have a go at just kind of being a bit out there with the creative. There's some of the best creative campaigns I've ever seen have been from interns and juniors, because they've not had the kind of shackles put on their creative thought from seniority or from years of experience. Like one of the biggest campaigns I think is, the Meerkat campaigns. From
Compare the Meerkat.
Compare the Market.
Yeah.
That was created by interns at an advertising agency.
Oh wow!
I mean, fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that that's correct. And they're examples of creatives that unbiased. They've not been shaped by the industry. So you tap into that resource, and just because you're an intern or a junior and you don't know every single answer doesn't mean that your ideas are rubbish at all. As someone who's approaching their 40s, I suddenly feel like I don't know everything about what's going on in the world, and I look to my more kind of younger staff members to kind of be like, hey, well, what is relevant? Like, what are people talking about? What are the actual issues that the generation that is going to be now our marketing generation interested in? It can feel quite...
Yeah, Katie, I know exactly what you mean. I had to do a TikTok video the other day, and that was an embarrassing moment for me. And for everyone watching.
I do the Backlash Instagram, and I have set up a Backlash TikTok, but I can't bring myself to do that. When it's like your parents are like, how does Facebook work? I literally feel that way about TikTok, and I can't bring myself to ask anybody how that works. I watch it, but I'm not going to create content on it.
I am intimidated by TikTok. But I think it's like, there is a Rob Mayhew. He's anyone who doesn't know about Rob Mayhew, he's an absolute legend, and I binge watch his TikToks. It's just like, he's kind of found a moment. But like trying to do something even as quarter of his level of creativity, you have to be prepared to actually put yourself out there and actually not be embarrassed in a way, and just go.
Do you know what? That's exactly right. I spend a lot of time with my team making sure they don't feel embarrassed about putting bonkers ideas out there. And I think it's kind of like a backlash, ironically, and that's why we call Backlash, by the way, that it's a backlash of bad agencies. And I say bad agency, bad management, where it's been about stifling creativity and making people feel stupid when they've not hit the brief and smashed it out of the park, rather than I nurture. That's my approach to this. I nurture every single one of my creative team members, and if the idea doesn't hit the mark, do you know what? We can work on that. There's something there, and they do their jobs really well, and we're also humans. We're not robots. You can't knock it out of the park every single time.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and these are the kind of things that you can only experience when you've been in the room with big companies as well as small companies, and then sometimes things just don't work out. Years ago, this may not make the edit. We worked with a really, really big sushi chain, and the client she was lovely actually. She was very understanding. We did this project for them, but something just wasn't working. This was a pretty big campaign for them, and they spent quite a big amount of money on this creative, which we filmed and edited, and we presented it to them, and they were like, this isn't working. We followed the brief to the dot, and we followed the brand guidelines, But I got a call from the person who hired us, and I thought, oh my God, get ready for ear bashing, or get ready for like a very uncomfortable call. But the wonderful thing this person said to me was, she's like, look, no one's died. This is just a campaign. If things go wrong, and we wouldn't be complaining to you if things went right. And I felt this kind of relief, because it was just like, okay, finally someone who kind of understood. Sadly, we didn't work with them again, but it was just like, I'll never forget that phone call, which is, no one's going to die from this. It's
That's
just
so interesting. That's exactly the sentence I've used a number of situations where the team is literally like, oh my God, everything's going wrong. And like, they're stressed and there's a lot of anxiety, and I can literally see tears forming in their eyes. And
wow.
It's because it comes from a place where they want to do amazing, and for whatever reason, it's just not going right. But it's fine. Like, you are not. At the end of the day, it is marketing.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it. And I think one of the questions you've asked me is 3 must-read books, and none of my books are marketing related. They're about being people and humans, and realizing this is a job at the end of the day. And
it is,
and types of things.
I think, and also what you said just before was, in our world, the best ideas should win, rather than the ideas that follow a strict guideline or budget guideline or whatever constraints. And usually the best ideas are the ones where you're not really, you've kind of just thought of a campaign, but then it just comes to you naturally.
100%.
And this kind of, a lot of the work we do with, especially with tech companies, they're hiring us to come up with ideas rather than, them telling us what to do.
Yeah.
Which is not what we're there for. It's like, I was talking to somebody, it's like going to a mechanic and telling them which wrench to use.
Yeah.
Whereas, you just let them do their own thing. Which takes me to the next question, Katie. What advice would you give to marketing agency or brands that want to work with agencies like yourself?
Yeah. I would say trust the agency that you're working with.
Yeah.
We've been doing it for a really long time, and it's all we do, day in, day out, for years. So I would say that if you are a client or brand and you want to work with an agency, it's really hard to say, but you just need to trust in their experience and just kind of loosen the reins a little bit. I also would say that when it comes to pop-ups, it's really tempting to want it to do 700 things all at once. But I would approach it again, just like any marketing campaign. It should do one thing really well, and that one thing then should be the most memorable part. And then once you get into the pop-up, that's when you can have those like smaller conversations about things that are less important to the brand. So, for example, if it's founder-led, do you have a founder day? When were you established? The brand journey. I work with a lot of brands who want to put in their kind of timeline of when they started to where they are. But they're great things to have. Once you've got into the pop-up, you can have a look around. But they're not kind of things that you would lead with. So what is the one thing that I am going to leave my house on a Friday to come into London to get involved with? It has to be hard hitting. So again, it's just approaching it like a TV advert that you're going to remember.
Wow.
Yeah.
And other like practical tips and tricks, I know you mentioned timings, like you cannot, there are some things that just take time to do. What advice would you give, in terms of, I know we spoke just before we hit record, in terms of time constraints that you have. Any brands or companies that are looking to hire Backlash or similar companies, how much time, resources, and these kind of things should you allocate?
So we typically work off a 4-month timeline, so 3 to 4 months.
And is that like quite constrained, or is that like the ideal time?
Ideal timeline.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't really take on anything that is less than 3 months from live day, because it becomes really stressful for us.
Yeah.
And we're not in the business of having a lot of stress. So one of the reasons why I set up a business called Backlash is because I felt like there was a lot of kind of stress that's put on people in this industry. So when we say like 3 months, we kind of stick by that in 4 months. But that's typical across the industry. That's not us being like, oh, we're just going to laze around for a few days. You know, that is us hitting the ground running. We're going to come up with 3 or 4 concepts. We've then got mood boards, which then you can give us feedback on. We'll then flesh out every single touch point. We'll then do location scouting, so you can come with us to all the locations that we think are good for your pop-up. There might be 4 or 5 that we suggest. So you come to all the locations with us. We then develop a consumer journey. So what happens when you walk into the pop-up? What happens when you get involved in this piece? So every single touch point all the way to when the customer exits. And then we design it. So we do the 3D designs, all the renders, all the walkarounds. We then do all the 2D, so the flat graphics. We then build it all. So we do all the technical drawings.
Yeah.
It then goes into production. Clients come down, they can have a look and see it being built. And then it goes into build. So we usually take about 3 days to build a pop-up if it's inside a shop. If it's outside a shop, it could be a week type thing. So yeah, then we start building it, and then it's live and it's off on its merry way. So it takes a long time, and it's actually one of the questions we get. We have management fees, and a lot of clients go, well, what is the management fee for? And we're like, I know that you might get a presentation and the next thing you see is designs, but in the background we're constantly, every day we're working on that project for 4 months, and that's what it covers. We're taking you from some Pinterest mood imagery to a physical structure in 4 months.
And a lot of the, I mean, not a lot, all the time, everything that you see in the pop-up is actually custom made and designed for that particular brand or that particular space.
Absolutely everything. We work a lot with brands that are online only, so they have no physical presence. So when you then go to that pop-up, we've built and design everything from scratch. So every single counter unit, how the retail works, the back of house, what the staff are wearing, we design that as well. What the goodies are people walk away with, we come up with that. We source all the tote bags, you know, absolutely everything we do.
And I spoke with, was it Pete? I spoke with Pete, who does...
Starkey.
Pete, I actually asked him, I told him that I would ask you, because he created the design and also the tablets for Pandora. Firstly, how do you actually even go out and find someone like Pete?
Yeah.
And how do you brief someone to create something that's never been done before?
So Pete, funnily enough, was an acquaintance of James, my business partner, from years ago. They used to work together. And we invited Pete in to kind of talk to us about what he's been up to. He'd been working on some pieces for Elemis we were really interested in. So we actually had him in, and he was telling us all about the stuff he'd been working on. And I was like, oh, do you know what? What Pete's talking about would fit, is exactly what I'm looking for the Pandora project. Again, it was this happy coincidences. And it's jumping on those kind of moments of, okay, great, we've got a supplier that wants to come in. Like, we should have everybody in the room and listen to what Pete has to say. And so then I was like, there and then, after Pete had done his presentation, I kind of ran in with my Pandora creative, and I was like, this is what I'm thinking. Could you do something like this? And Pete was like, yeah, absolutely. This is not a problem for us. How much time have you got? Is the first question. And I was like, we've got plenty of time. And then I just started kind of, it was just more of a verbal conversation. I was like, right, I want a customer to create their own bespoke art piece. I want them to go step by step. And then I just had this idea of how I wanted it to work. So how would I do it on a phone was like my first thought, you know. And then I was like, could you print it out? But I need it on the screens as well. And Pete was just like, do you know what? I'll pull some wireframes together for you. Yeah. Just step by step, nothing visual. It's just going to be like some squares and some buttons. Yeah. And let's, like a storyboard, and let's work through that. And I did that. And then we just worked on the wireframe together. And then I was like, here's the brand guidelines. And then I worked with a graphic designer to create the different stamps and the brushes for the art piece. And then I gave them to Pete. And him and his team built all of that and just completely followed exactly the narrative.
Yeah, because when I actually saw Pete's work, and I met Pete at the pop-up. He's like, "Oh, I created all these things," and I was taken aback because everything was just made for that particular, the pop-up stand, and it had to be printable, and it had to, and I've worked with a few SaaS companies, even just to get that done, there's a lot of technical wizardry that's going on behind the scenes. So he did an amazing job.
Yeah, he did. Honestly, from the moment I sat down and started working with him, I was just like, I'm absolutely in safe hands. And, I'm sending feedback and I'm like, can you move this over to the left? Can you change this and make it pink? And then 15 minutes later, it's done. And do you know what I mean? It's like that's so hard to come by sometimes.
Yeah.
He did it amazingly, and it ran so smoothly as well. He was on hand throughout the whole time, so he was remote working as well, so he could log into the monitors, and if there was issues, he was able to kind of jump in and sort them out.
Yeah, and for someone who I was really impressed with what he did, and I spoke to him afterwards because we provided him with some rushes for his show reel, and he was really just easy to talk to, down to earth.
He's kind of a bit of a mad scientist because he could make a little robot for you that did something if he wanted. I don't think there's anything that wild that I could say to Pete that he'd be like, that's definitely not, you could never do that
with outside of his reach or technical expertise. Last two things. Away from your work with the clients, how do you actually go out and promote Backlash to the industry, to your future clients? The reason for this question is anyone who's watching who's maybe working in an agency and they want to get the word out.
Yeah. We do a number of different things, and none of them are groundbreaking. I think we talked about that. I was like, I'm not going to tell you anything that is going to blow your mind. But we do a lot of PR. So we work with a PR team, and they have a lot of connections for us. So we write a lot of editorial pieces. We write trends reports. We do absolutely everything that we can to kind of get our voice out there, and work a lot with journalists with what they may or may not need for different pieces, for beauty or fashion or for industry. We do a lot of awards as well. So we enter awards that are appropriate to us. So we do that, and then social media, the norm. So we do the Instagram, and we do LinkedIn, and then SEO as well is another one that we do. So if you Googled Backlash, I think it comes up first underneath the dictionary definition of backlash now. Oh wow,
that's really cool. And anyone who knows SEO, how much of a hard work that is. Whereas if you Google interesting content, you also have that as well.
Funnily enough, there's we really want the domain backlash.com, and for years I've been trying to get hold of it, but it's owned by a guy in America who uses it for the most. I mean, please have a look, but the website is kind of very 90s. It hasn't been updated. He uses it as his own news site for kind of backlash content. And I've tried to get hold of that domain for a while, but he's not going to sell it. Yeah, he's got a price, but I'm not matching it.
Thing is, when I bought the interestingcontent.com domain, it was a painful day. But I finally managed to buy it. It was being domain squatted by someone, and I think they were selling links to all sorts of dodgy websites. And every time someone would type in interesting content, it would go there. I mean, it wouldn't be the first one, but it was, and I think as a sense of pride, you kind of, as an agency owner, you want to kind of own it and then kind of have control over it.
Yeah.
But one day, I think you will maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. He updates it every day. This is the annoying thing. So it's not he's just sitting there, not being used. But
I mean, I think you're doing okay. Just next to the dictionary definition of backlash.
I know. I'm getting him down the Google search.
That's the way you're going to win. One last thing, guerrilla marketing campaigns you've run, and any advice for marketers looking to run guerrilla campaigns?
Yeah, so I've done a number of guerrilla activations in my time, not necessarily at Backlash. One of them was for Nestle, so it was for their cereal brands. and they called it a cereal lift. So they'd done some research into if you have cereal in the morning, you get this like lift, this natural lift. So it was all about the importance of having cereal in the morning, and they really wanted to elevate that kind of message. So they came to us for some kind of guerrilla ideas, and one of the ideas, I had was I wonder if in commuter hubs I could like float people around the station. So like they've had their cereal lift, so they just kind of like float around. And that was my wildcard idea, and they went for it straight away. And I was like, okay, how do we make people float around Waterloo Station? So we got in touch with a number of magicians and illusionists.
Well, so it was magic?
Yeah, the practicality was that you can't actually just float people around. So me and my account director, Nadia, we had to get initiated into the magic circle to work with magicians. I know. This is the world you get into when you come up with those mad ideas, isn't it? But so we became part of the magic circle so that we could work with these magicians to learn how to do their illusions.
Whoa, this podcast has taken a very magical turn here.
And then, so we actually managed to kind of levitate these magicians around the station. So guerrilla marketing, that could feel guerrilla. When you go and see, like, people are just floating around, that can feel guerrilla, but also it takes a lot of planning. So that's why I was going to come to what people should know is the nature of guerrilla feels like it should be like, bam, bam, it's just appeared. But be prepared for some logistics behind it. You can't just rock up somewhere. The council will come and fine you instantly. Take
it away. We've done things where we could have potentially been arrested, but luckily not been arrested yet. So you're part of the magic circle as well, so you cannot reveal how the people were levitating.
No.
Sad times. Yeah. Sad times, listeners and viewers. But hopefully you'll tell me off air, or maybe you cannot.
I can't. I don't think.
Sworn to secrecy. No. I had no idea that, because when I researched your LinkedIn, I was like, you'd done some guerrilla campaigns, but I had no idea it went that deep.
This is just the commitment to the creative idea, really.
That's amazing. So this is the part of the podcast where we ask rapid fire questions. And I think we touched on this just before. 3 must-read books.
Yeah. So I only managed to get 2, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
So one I've read tons is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Absolutely read that book, because it's just about perspective, and it's so easy to lose your head in marketing and feel like it's the be all and end all of everything. That helps me feel like a human again when I read it. And so that's why it's one of my massive recommendations. And then the other one is The Alchemist.
Yeah. Paulo Coelho.
Yes. Oh my God, thank God you're here, because my best friend is Portuguese. She's sitting over there. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pronounce that correctly.
Yeah.
But again, it is about being human at the end of the day, and sometimes you just need that perspective shift to feel, okay, no, do you know what? It's not all about my business, it's not all about my brand. I can actually just...
Helps you feel grounded again.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I would say is please learn how to give feedback.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's like something that not a lot of people would say, and I'm so bad at this. I will just ramble and stuff and say how I feel, but like one of the pieces of advice I would say is being able to give feedback and not just saying the things that you don't like. So it's
constructive
feedback, yeah, absolutely. If it's like, well, a lot of feedback we get is it's just not working hard enough, or it's just not strong enough, or that'll be the feedback, but I can't do anything with that. It's not a quantifiable piece of feedback for us to work on. So we struggle with that a lot. It actually takes a lot of time. So I would say being able to give feedback and say exactly what it is that you want to change, or what exactly is it you want to work harder. That would be best advice.
Anyone who's worked in marketing knows exactly what you mean, sadly. Final words and contact details.
The final words, I was like, it sounds like I'm passing away.
Words of wisdom, it should be.
One of the best pieces of advice I got given when I started in the industry was be kind to people on your way up, because you never know who you're going to hit on the way down.
Oh, wow.
And that stuck with me for a really long time. And when I started out, I was like, what are you on about? Like, that means nothing. When you're at the top, you're at the top. But I'm now at a stage now where people who were my creative directors and my managers, you know, they're kind of taking a step back now, and they're maybe going freelance or these things, and they're getting in touch with me. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird. But because we had that relationship, even when I was a junior, I was like, these are decent people and they're really nice. Whereas if they'd been horrible to me, which a lot of them have, I will just ignore them or just not reply.
Well, what goes around comes around.
Yeah, exactly.
Last thing, how can people get hold of you if they want to find out more, get in touch, or learn how to levitate?
Our main ones, so we obviously backlash.co.uk. Our Instagram is Backlash Creative, and then we're on LinkedIn all the time. But there are three main ones. Backlash, we're the hopefully only ones that you might find in the UK, not backlash.com.
Just type in Backlash and then you'll find them.
Yeah, under the dictionary.
And it's Katie Peake on LinkedIn.
Yes, yeah.
So if anyone is looking for help with Experiential or any words of advice, wisdom, get in touch with Katie and Backlash. Thank you again for your time, Katie. I know that you're very busy. And I guess this is like almost like the calm before the storm of things that are going to come in for this year. Yeah. So we are very excited to see what you'll come up with next and what ideas from the bucket list that you'll kind of make it through. So thank you again for watching and listening, and we'll see you at the next one.